All right, so we are live for the next of the group coaching webinars that I'm doing. This one's on how to use your shoulders to drive your cornering movement. And so some of the stuff that I say in this is going to go against some of the usual advice that you hear, but I'm going to explain kind of how I came to these conclusions and some of the stuff that I do to help me practice this. And I've actually got some new stuff with this webinar, so sorry I was a couple minutes late getting started. But I got a couple of videos and I am going to get into the mix. So I had to make sure I had those set up and ready to roll. So I kind of wanted to show you guys some stuff on the bike, which is hard to do here in my gym. So anyways, if anyone has any questions as we're going along, you've got the chat room feature. You can just throw your questions or comments up there, and I'll keep an eye out for them and get to them as we go along. So anyway, so let's get started. So I do have some notes here that are going to help keep me on point, so I don't want to lose my focus. But what this boils down to is a couple of questions that I ran into on my mountain biking journey. And I'm not very good at cornering naturally. It's definitely something that I've had to work very hard on. And so I guess at the essence of this, it comes down to how do you corner your bike? And there's one of two different ways to look at cornering your bike. So we're told to lean the bike and not our body. But while I understand what they mean by that, it's more like lean the bike inside, not your body inside, which I'll explain here in a little bit more. But the idea is, do you drive your cornering from manual inputs, or do you drive your cornering from your balance points on the bike? And so manual inputs are things like drop the outside foot, straighten the inside arm, bring the arm up. Maybe, I've heard trying to keep your chin close to the outside grip. So those are things that you just manually do to the bike. And, when you do that, you're gonna have to make some weight shifts and stuff, obviously, to compensate for that. But which one of those is driving the bike or driving the cornering? So what I've kind of come to the conclusion over the years is that it's not necessarily those manual inputs that are driving our cornering, but this should be complementing our cornering. And so, along the way, like I said, I read the books, I took the clinics, I've done the drills. I mean, I've even got some videos up explaining this is how you corner your bike and all the manual inputs and stuff. But the problem was I kept running into a couple of issues. There were times when the usual advice didn't work, and I've actually got a scar on this pinky here because twice I leaned my bike and it was into a rock or a stump. It was very tight. There wasn't a whole lot of room to go, and so if I lean my bike, which is what we're told to do, or I was told to do, then I'd knuckle punch things. And so it was like, okay, am I just not supposed to corner and be able to flow through things like this? And I found that wasn't necessarily true. That there were times when I could get my balance points, I felt, to drive myself around these corners, and I was able to corner well without the manual input. So something started to well, if we're told the manual inputs are what drive cornering, why can I corner without the manual inputs? And so there were instances like that, off camber corners, where if you lean the bike too much, the edges of your tires start to grab and start to climb up. Again, if you lean the bike to get around those corners, you're going to end up running into some issues. So well, there's other ways to get around those corners. And so again, it started to get me thinking that maybe there's more to it. And so one day I was talking to my father-in-law, who my wife's from Hawaii, and my father-in-law is this big haunch in the surf industry, and he makes this comment to me about how everyone thinks that you turn your surfboard with your hips, but you don't. And I found this really interesting. I was interested to hear what he said, because I've often thought cornering and turning a mountain bike is more like turning a skateboard or a surfboard or skis. It's a different there's some different things between that and cornering a motorized powered motorcycle. And so he said, yeah, your shoulders turn your surfboard, your shoulders turn your hips, and then your hips turn the surfboard. And I thought about it, and I was like, well, yeah, you're right. If you ever watch surfers, you'll see that they'll whip the shoulders, and the shoulders will lead the hips, and then the hips will lead the feet. And I started thinking like, well, if that's true for surfers, if that's how you use your hips to corner and carve a wave, then realistically it's probably the same way on your bike in some ways. So I started thinking more about, well, how do I apply my shoulders to drive my hips and use that to drive my cornering technique. And so that started to, I started to feel better and more consistent with my cornering technique, doing it that way. And you know, there were still a couple things that I needed to get dialed in, but it was one of those like aha moments, like, oh, okay, when I focus on my shoulders, then other things start to click better. And so, you know, for me, I'm always trying to think about what are the one or two main drivers of a movement. If I can think and focus about these one or two things, because in the moment, you're not going to be able to go through the 10 steps of cornering. You know what I mean? You can't go like step 1, step 2, step 3. Like things happen way too fast. And so you have to find those one or two things that you can dial in on that are going to drive the bulk of your technique. And then once you kind of get into the main position, you can start thinking about some of these other things to fine tune it. But I found that the shoulders really help me get my hips into the right position, and I'll you know, show you kind of how that works here in just a second when we do the videos, and I'm going to show you a couple of exercises and stuff that I like to use to train this movement as well. So anyway, so that's kind of the main you know, idea and how I've arrived at where I'm at with this. And so you know, there we go, just checking my notes there. So again, the idea is your shoulders turn the hips, and then that's what ends up turning your bike, and you want to use the manual inputs as needed to help with that. And so what I'm going to do is show a couple of videos to kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about. And this went out, so apologize for the technology snafus. So all right, here we go. Give me a second. I'm going to turn on some lights. I'm going to get moving. All right, cool. So here's the deal. Here's what I was talking about: manual inputs or your shoulders driving the action. So if we're coming into a corner, right? If we're coming into a left-hand corner, we want to have our left foot forward and coming into it here. So when I come into this corner, do I want to rely on straightening the arm and, you know, getting this chin up by the hand and straighten this outside foot, and then pointing this this around? Like, this is, you know, pretty much how it's explained. It's through the manual inputs versus getting set, coming into the corner, and then the key is going to be dropping this inside shoulder, dipping this inside shoulder. If I dip my inside shoulder and everything else stays strong, then this happens. See how my hips kick out, this comes down, you know, everything that I want to have happen happens. So this even sets my my counter steering right here, because I don't even have to do anything, and I've already changed my arm position and started to set that. So again, you can set these things more as you need to based on traction, but the idea is don't focus on you know, these manual inputs and then think about, you know, your body and stuff like that. Think about your body first, and then use the manual inputs as needed. And so again, that dipping the inside shoulder is one of those things that really drives it. So again, like I said, like, you know, a surfer, when they corner, you're going to see them really drive the shoulders. The shoulders will go, and the hips will follow, and then the feet will follow. And so that's the same idea. And you know, you have to get in front of the action a little bit. It's really hard to corner effectively from the back seat, being behind the bike. So, you know, your center of gravity in relation to the bike center of gravity is very important with how you're going to be able to handle where your balance points are. And so it feels safe to be behind your bike center of gravity, but, you know, the trade-off is it's harder to maneuver and corner and manipulate your bike from back there when you're in front of your bike center of gravity a little bit and you're leading the action. You're able to you know, drive these things much more effectively. So anyway, so that's the basic idea there. So if you have any questions or anything as I dive into this, let me know. And take a look at my notes and make sure that I am not missing anything. So To do this, you need to get some pressure on your hands and lead the bike through the corner, which is something that I just talked about. So again, that idea of having some pressure on your palms when you're going into the corner, and you know, you can't counter steer. You have to have weight on your front end. So that means you have to have that pressure on your palms. And so you're looking for the handlebars to be across, you know, this point right here. And you know, you got the little trigger point here. It acts as a pressure sensor that your brain uses for feedback to help tell it how to be strong and stable, or how strong and stable to be, which is why you want to get that on the handlebar, or one of the reasons. But it also gives you a much more effective spot to push from when you're doing your counter steering, and so you're much stronger that way. So so you want to get that, and then so the idea is you want to focus on corkscrewing or corkscrewing your hips out and not leaning in. And so again, there's definitely a danger if you lean your body inside of your bike, you're going to crash. And so you don't want to do that, but you do need to lean your body, and leaning your body and changing your balance points is again the focal point of cornering, at least what I found to be real helpful with that. So the two exercises that I found that help with that are the stick windmill and the kettlebell windmill. And so, you know, show you a couple, show you the exercises you're probably familiar with by this point, but I'll give you a couple of tips and pointers on it, you know, just kind of help with the focus with the cornering. So again, with the stick windmill, this is a great mobility drill. It's also just a good, if you don't have mobility and you struggle with this, then just keep working on this. This is a great exercise in and of itself until you get good at it, and then it's just a mobility exercise, and then you need to move on to the kettlebell windmill. But until that point, just stick with the stick windmill. It's a great movement right here. If you never move beyond this, you'll still get great results and really help your cornering. So again, to do this, you're going to step 1 foot forward and have 1 foot back. So it almost feels like where your feet would be on the pedals. You don't want them to wide, just about hip width apart. And you're going to start by shifting your weight back onto this rear leg. And so there's a distinct weight shift and then move. You don't want to try to like do it all in one movement. It doesn't work that way. And this applies on the bike as well. When you're going into your corner, you don't want to just come into it neutral. You want to have your weight already shifted and ready, so that when you dive that shoulder, your hips are already kind of, you know, pre-hinged and ready to start reacting to those shoulders diving. And so same thing here. You're just kind of presetting those hips so that now when I focus on diving this shoulder to the ground, you know, using the word diving loosely here, I'm just trying to get it to point down at the ground, but that's my focus is if I get this shoulder to point down to the ground, my hips do what they need to do. I don't have to worry about my hips and doing much with them as long as I'm focusing on getting my shoulders to come down. So again, we're going into this corner here, getting these foot forward, turn left, shift the weight, and then I dive this hip so that drives the corners out, right? And that's what we want, getting the hips out. So the corkscrewing motion that I'm talking about is when I do this, you'll notice how my shoulders are I'm still balanced over my feet. What you don't want to do is this. I mean, you see, like, I'm not balanced standing there doing that. So you don't want to lean your body inside the corner because you're definitely going to lose your balance doing that way. But you do need to lean your body. If you learn how to corkscrew the body so that the hips shift, but the shoulders stay over your feet and you stay balanced, then you're able to do it more effectively. So again, the stick windmill is just working on that. So if I'm here, I'm not taking it to the extreme that I am doing this. That's why I end up facing this way. Sometimes people get confused by this exercise because at the bottom you're facing away when I'm talking about how it's going to help you shift your hips to go this way. But it's just because you're taking it to such an extreme that it ends up turning your head. If you don't take it to that extreme, then you're able to compensate and still look up. But eventually, if I keep bringing my shoulders down, I'm going to end up having to look that way. So hopefully that makes sense. But anyways, again, I'm going to show you from the side here. Got my feet set, weight shift, and then I'm just focusing on getting this shoulder to point down to the ground. I get this elbow wedged behind this this knee here. And I want to make sure I'm keeping my weight on this back leg. I don't want to shift all my weight forward like this. I want to keep my weight on this back leg as much as possible and really drive through it. And then again, coming up, driving through this back leg and you know, not really pushing off that front leg as much. So that's the stick windmill. And again, great stretch, great mobility exercise, and it also works good with the yeah, for helping with that cornering movement there. So let's see here. Cool. All right. So the next one is going to be the kettlebell windmill, and it's just the same movement. We're just adding load to it, and so it's really good for working on the you know, mountain bike specific core strength that we need on the trail. And so anyway, so to get set up, you're just gonna get your kettlebell, or you can use a dumbbell with this as well. You need a barbell if you're really hardcore. I actually remember the first time I did this was back in the day before we had kettlebells, and it was like grab a barbell and go for it. So John Davies, man, Renegade Training. So all right, anyways, get your weight up, get it up overhead, and we're gonna get set the same way. So I've got my feet set, hip width apart. I'm going to step the foot opposite of the side, holding the weight forward. And so, but my feet are in the same basic position that they would be with the stick windmill here. And then same sequence. I'm going to kick my hips over, so I'm presetting my hips. And then I just focus on diving this shoulder down to the ground. And then I get my elbow behind there. And then I drive through that rear leg back up. Set the hips. Dive this shoulder down to the ground and drive through that trail leg to come back up. So shoot it from the side here, kick the hips. And back up. All right, so that's basically it. The basic idea is that you're using the stick windmill to help work on that mobility that you need. That's the first place to start. Then you're using the kettlebell windmill to work on the strength and stress-proof the movement. You want to build the movement, and then you want to stress-proof the movement. You want to make sure that as you fatigue and as you stress it on the trail, that it's not going to break down. And efficiency of movement is huge. You know, how efficiently you move as you fatigue is extremely important in the overall scheme of things there. So, making sure you're keeping that in mind with both the quality, and then make sure you're maintaining that quality as you're adding the strength elements to it. And then, using drills to help you, then hone those movements and get them dialed in for use on the trail. And then, having your skills training rides. I mean, your moderate rides, your skills training rides should really be the cornerstone of your overall kind of riding and training program. Like, you should be doing way more of those than you are anything else. And, you should be limiting the hard rides, because realistically, how many hard rides do you really have in you each week? If you say you're always riding hard, you're not really riding hard. Hard is relative to something else. So if you don't have moderate rides, you don't have easy rides, then you don't really have hard rides. They just feel hard because you just don't know any different. But if you vary the intensities, you're going to be able to, one, ride harder on your hard days, and you're going to get just more out of your overall approach, because by focusing the bulk of your time on your efficiency and your skills, you're going to really help your overall endurance and performance, both now and in the long run. So remember, nobody's VO2 max improves forever. So that efficiency becomes super important. So that's basically it. Apologize again about the videos there. I wish they worked. I'm going to figure out how to make it work, because I think it'd be cool to be able to get them as a part of the thing here. But so yeah. So if nobody has any questions or comments or anything like that, I think I'm going to we'll call it at that. And yeah. get everything figured out. You know, said it's a work in progress. I really like these webinars because it does give me a chance to interact with people and share some cool stuff with you guys. But just got to get all of the bugs worked out and make it even better. So well, cool. Hopefully it gives you guys some fuel for thought. Again, it's that idea. Think like a surfer. Remember when I lived in Hawaii? We had these guys who'd surf with us whenever the surf was blown out. They'd be like, man, it's always 6 feet and blasty on the trail, bro. And but they would just, I'd watch them ride, and they just had the most natural like grace, and they were always like, you know, really good riders. And one of the things they excelled at was just flowing with the trail and cornering. And I remember thinking like, man, just got to think about surfing the trail. Just think about surfing the trail. And so that's kind of the idea with what we're trying to do at the man. Just think about surfing the trail, let your shoulders lead your hips, you know, use those balance points to drive your cornering and the manual inputs to help with you know, traction as needed. And you know, hopefully it'll start to feel more consistent for you on the trail. So yeah, cool. Yeah, thanks, Brent. I really appreciate your help with the videos there. So cool. I'll tell you what, and hit me up, send me an email or I guess I've got your email through the sign up. So I'll send that out. I'll get the video link sent out. I've actually got those up on YouTube. So anyways, if you don't see that for some reason, hit me up at james@bikejames.com and just let me know, and I'll shoot those over to you. So over to everybody. So there you go. That's it. Appreciate it, and I will talk to you guys in the next one.